Welcome to another informative session of the Grow Show with Keshelle and Dr. Glenn.
All right, I'm excited to join with you once again, Dr. Davis.
You're just blushing and cutting up, trying to get me nervous for this session.
No, not at all.
Stay
We're
focused.
talking serious stuff. So today we're talking to lifelong learners. And again, if you identify as a lifelong learner, you are always seeking to learn and grow. Mm-hmm. And we had some questions from our loyal listeners. I'm going to call out Christina Mosley Roll. We're going to shout out Crystal Bain. LaDonna Loves to Dance. I know that's not your formal government name, but that's what we know you as. And so you submitted some questions along with some other questions that came up under our episodes. And so we wanted to address those questions today. Yes? And Dr. Glenn is my able assistant with these questions. He's putting the questions on me, but this is a conversation, sir.
Of course. Whatever you say.
All right, so question number 1 comes from Crystal, and she asks, how do you identify when your season is up at an institution, at a job? And the kind of a follow-up similar question was, how do you pivot when you feel stuck in your career? Very similar questions, but they're slightly different. And so question number 1 is how to identify when your season is up. I think this is a really good question because especially now, so many things has changed since the pandemic. I mean, we're not only focusing on that, but that has caused a lot of people to want more, to shift. They've become different people, and so it's easy for a season to end. I think for me, I always recognize, and you said it in an earlier episode, and I'm very similar to that, when I find myself, because I'm generally a person who gives all in an organization, and so whenever I find myself not wanting to give or work, or I find myself complaining too much, that is definitely a sign for me that, okay, it's time to go. Because for me, I'm that type of person. I either going to complain, and when I find, or what am I saying? I want to stay on the job and work.
You complain, or you cut. You get out of there.
Yeah, if I find myself complaining too much, that's my sign that it's time to go. Yeah. And then the second thing, when I look at this question and reflect on my career, is sometimes I've outgrown the organization. I am always growing, I'm always learning, I'm always working towards the next thing, whatever the next thing is, or just learning for the sake of growing and becoming a better leader in my career. And sometimes when I've grown enough and I look around and I'm like, okay, there's no room to utilize these skills, and there's no room to showcase what I now have become, then it's time to go. It's really time to go. And there are literally times when I woke up, and I said this when I talk to entrepreneurs, they ask, how do you know it's time to leave your job for a business? And my answer, it seems always weird, but it's really my core answer. You just know. Yeah. You wake up, at least for me, I've woken up and I'm like, okay, it's time to go.
There's
it's just knowing.
Yeah,
it's just a knowing.
Because I remember when I left the financial services industry, I felt it was time. And how I felt it was time, and I think I'd have mentioned this in a previous episode, I started to complain about what I was so passionate about.
Yeah.
I started to not want to learn anything new. I remember there was a period where the industry started to do a lot of compliance. I didn't even want to learn compliance.
Right.
So in order to be effective at my job, I needed to know more about compliance. And I just found myself like, no, I don't want to learn anything about compliance. Yeah. I just don't want to learn anything new at this stage. And that didn't sound right when I replay in my mind, because I'm a person who believes in growth.
Yeah.
And then my part-time gig that I only go for 3 hours out of the week was so fulfilling and so passionate for me. And in the thing that I worked from 9 to 5, I was just going, I remember walking in my boss office and I would say to him, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
But I have this mortgage, or I don't want to be here. I'm sick and tired of whatever. And so that's when I knew my season was ending.
Yeah.
Because I started to become a complainer, and that's not good for a leader.
And you have certain bad days on a job.
Yeah.
You have certain bad weeks on a job.
No, these were not bad days.
So, that's what I wanted to...
These were just bad going to work.
Yes,
You know,
and that's why I wanted to make that distinction, because don't look at it, okay, I'm complaining today on something as a time to leave, but you just, if that becomes the norm, especially as if you are someone who are committed to doing great work, yes.
And you will know if it's not you, because it was not me.
Yeah.
I don't complain about work. If I have a commitment to whatever it is, and I just do it.
Yeah. And so the follow-up question to that is, how to pivot when you feel stuck in your career. So I don't know if I want to leave, but I feel stuck in what I'm doing. Is that time to leave, or is that there's something else that needs to be done?
Leaving is always the default response.
Yeah.
And leaving is always the easy response. So I would never advise a person to just leave. You have to do some assessment. What else can I do within this organization? Because it may be like it may be a good organization to work in, but that particular department or that particular area. So how can I learn something new? Can I cross-train in another department? Can I be transferred in a new department where I'm going to learn new skills?
Yeah.
And so before you make the transition to leave, I would say do an assessment of what is inside the organization that you can utilize to help to enrich you.
And then I think it goes back to, what are your passions? Tapping into your passions. Are you on this job because you may be stuck and may still be passionate about what you're doing? So have that assessment. Okay, is this job, am I still passionate about it? Am I still learning? I'm just in a season where I feel stuck. Find out what they are. Begin to dig up those questions, speak to someone, and then really make a decision. Sometimes, again, I'm a person, when I've been in roles and jobs, I've always applied for new jobs, even when I wasn't stuck. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I always wanted to know if I was still marketable. Always. Now, if you give me a job and I'm ready to leave my existing job, I will decline it, or it has to be a good opportunity.
You're just like poking the bear.
I think that's why perhaps I've never felt stuck.
I'm not going to be applying for nothing unless it's time for me to apply.
No, if I see a role that fits my qualifications and I'm like, okay, let me see if I still got it. And so sometimes because sometimes we get stuck because we feel as if this is all we have and there's no other prospects. You want to always be in a place where, and Will Smith talks about this in his book. He said he always wanted to be ahead, 1-2 steps ahead. So if he was doing this role, he would always be, okay, what is after this? And I think that's a type of mentality to have, because you're always, otherwise a year, 2 years, 3 years will go by, and 10 years will go by and you're still in the same place. And you become
so that's how the overachiever and the critical mind and the things. For me, I would think differently. Like, I'm in a role, how can I be the best I can be in this role? What else can I learn? What other skills can I get? How can I reskill? What is the new technology or the new trend in this particular area? So I'm still expanding, but I'm not necessarily looking for something else. So I guess it comes back to your personality. It comes back to where you want to go, what you want to do. I would stay in that role and learn as much as I can, and then transition if I have to.
Yeah. There's so many things to say. I think the biggest thing is know what your vision is. And assess whether that role is still connected to the vision that you have for your life. If so,
and work on you. You could be complaining about the role. What are you doing to work on you, the individual? Because outside of the role, you still have goals. You still need to learn. You still need to be empowered. And I would always say this to my employees when I worked in the bank. If you don't use it here, you will use it there.
Yeah.
And so you can learn the skill, and you don't necessarily have to use it in this institution, but that's something you can take wherever you go with you.
One last thing I'll say, and it's something that I posted on my social media page the other day, about asking question about the season that you're in, right? And that job may be that particular season. And it's asking, what is this job teaching me? What is this season, this job teaching me? And also, where is this job taking you? A job, we're filling the blanks, career, whatever season you're in. Where is this taking me? And sometimes that alone is enough to kind of shake you up and help you become aware of, okay, you know what? Right now, this is how I feel, but let me stay in this place because I know it's taking me somewhere or back to vision, or I know that it's teaching me something that I perhaps need to be taught before I can move on.
Yeah, what do I need to learn before I make that next move?
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that. Okay, so I think a good next question is this future of learning, because we talked about what we need to learn. And, as lifelong learners, there's always something to learn. And we just talk about defining what we need to learn in order to move to another season. What do you think about, and this question is, how do I compete and survive with tools like AI, ChatGPT, and all of these tools that are coming up that is competing for my role? Technology, right? And I love this question because, of course, I've been a tech teacher for 20 years. And I've always taught technology or new technologies coming out, particularly Microsoft and those. And that has always been a fear. So first of all, ChatGPT and AI, these technologies that are now gaining ground, is just new technologies. The technologies 20 years ago that for Microsoft that I would teach, it was always a fear that they will take over someone's role.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, humans will be here. But the key mindset is, the question is, how can you upskill and opt to learn these technologies? One thing that I've seen is people fear the technologies and they say they don't like it because they don't know it. Because they don't, and you know this. You know this.
Tell me how I know. Tell me.
Because you would always say, I don't like this, or I don't want to be bothered with this technology. I'm a tech geek, y'all. So any software.
So you're throwing me under the bus.
Any software that I give me a software, I'm going to learn it because I like to figure out technology. He, on the other hand, no, I don't like this. I can't be bothered with this.
So why when I throw the technology stuff to you, we argue about it?
Because you need to learn it. And this is my point
that's
here.
What you do well.
This is my point
then
here.
You do it well.
Don't fear the technology. So if you say, okay, I want to continue to grow and evolve in my career, and I'm afraid that these systems now are competing for either my role or people are being hired knowing these technologies, your job is to learn them, is to know them. Don't run from it. Take a class, find a book, go on YouTube.
But the two of us don't need to learn. If you know it, then it's just like, I know.
What if I'm not around? Just with the earlier episode, you say, don't call me when you're tired, you had a flat tire?
Don't call me.
Don't call me when you need
like
to learn
you was waiting to throw this one in the next, right?
What if I'm not around?
I could Skype you in, I could Facebook you in, I could even FaceTime you in.
Then I can't, so that means I control your career.
No, you help with the technology. No. Anything. I remember when the pandemic hit and everybody was rushing to the Zoom and the technology, and I was so lost. And I remember that weekend I said to you, babes, I cannot go back to school on Monday not knowing this thing because those students will have me for chalks. You can't be having hard mode and then don't know the technology. And so in that weekend, you just took me through the process and I was able to maneuver. And by Monday, Tuesday, I was a pro at it. So I believe you should learn it.
And also, if your organization is not using it, because we talk about your organizations using it, but if they're not up to speed with the technologies yet, that is your role. Because if you see the writing on the wall, you learn the technology, you pay for your own growth and then become the expert in your organization to support the trainers. And based on the previous question, if they're not ready to use that level of skill, there are other organizations that will.
And you make a very interesting point. A lot of times we're waiting for people as lifelong learners to give us the resource, the money, the time in order to go and do the learning. But it doesn't work like that. If you're the one who want to get that knowledge, you may even have to pay for it yourself.
You have to pay for it. And then sometimes just ask. And first of all, ask your organization if, hey, this is a tool that I need to learn. If they don't, pay for it yourself because they can't take that from you.
Yeah, you'll always have that knowledge.
And you become more valuable to yourself, not even to the organization, because you become more valuable.
Marketable.
And now when you go apply for those jobs, you get that. Yes.
So what do you say to my students that feel like they could use? We have a couple more minutes. What do I say to my students who feel like they can use this AI and this chat
You ask me?
to answer my essays?
Use it now. Again, I'm a
so
techie.
you tell them, use it.
I'm a techie. So my thought process is that it's not going to make you any less of a student. I teach technology this way. The technology is meant to make you smarter, faster, and better. To get you the job doing smarter, faster, and better. Will the AI get me to finish my essay smarter, faster, and better? Yes.
Let's take a plug. Any of my students listening, don't take that information from Ms. Davis. You take it from your professor. Don't use it unless your professor gives you the permission to use it. Because, like last semester, I had a group of marketing students who did a marketing plan. They did the marketing plan and they used they call it third-party app, the AI, to
enhance.
I can't say enhance, but when I got the information, it was very well written above their level. And so I was able to spot it.
Okay.
When I put that information in to Turnitin, right? Turnitin told me.
Turnitin just for the sake of...
Most people know what is Turnitin.
No, I don't know what Turnitin is.
Turnitin is a plagiarism checker,
okay,
right, that we use in academia. It told me that they didn't plagiarize, right? 3% of their work was cited. They didn't plagiarize. But what percentage was?
60-some?
61, 62% of the work was written by an AI or was revised or whatever by an AI. I couldn't give them a passing grade because to me, you didn't write that.
But I put the information in for the AI to write it. I still had contributed. It's a classic input output.
And that's why learning and having the knowledge is important to know how it's used, when it should be used and when it should not be used.
Right.
Or when you use it, if it's used in the right context. If I'm asking you to do original piece of work, it could come across as if you didn't write that yourself.
Right.
But so for example, if you're creating a document to market to your client and you use the chat GPT to help you refine it, I don't see anything wrong with that. But in academia, I think we need to do more research on it and have more conversation on it and how we're going to implement it or not. And so that's all I would say on that.
Yeah, and I think employees, or they need to be smarter, faster, and better. Meaning, if you're telling me I need to write a process or I need to prepare this report, I don't have the time in the day to prepare the report. I can stress myself out.
And you just come and say, ChatGPT.
Or I can go to ChatGPT and say, write me a report for XYZ based on XYZ based on XYZ. Right? And it is not taking what the report or the tool gives me and just handing it in. It's utilizing now my critical thinking to adjust that report, to enhance that report, to tweak that report based on what my standards are.
So you're justifying ChatGPT.
I'm justifying the use of tools in your learning, in your growth, in your career, in your business. Don't run from the tools.
And I tend to agree with you because it's different from academia.
Yeah.
And academia need to go and sit down and discuss how we're going to incorporate, like I say, or not. In business, if you have to write a report and you're able to use this tool to help you to write a report efficiently, it's still a difference from you talking about writing original work for academia. And so that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So before we end, right?
Yes.
One last question, and this always comes up, and I think I mentioned this to you before, and you said you never heard the term before, too much learning will make you crazy. Get that a lot. Like I used to get that a lot. Like, oh, you get another degree or you learning something else. Too much learning will make you crazy. And people actually quote the Bible where Governor Festus says to Paul, Paul, too much studying making you mad.
And
people
Paul
justify that. We don't need to get involved with what Paul said, but what do you think about that generic statement about?
I disagree because I don't believe that you can have too much learning. I think you learn for different seasons, and you can learn a lot for one season, and that learning is utilized for that season, and then you have an entire new season. You become a different person. You get a new opportunity, and then you have to learn for that opportunity. I believe you die if you don't learn.
So
of course.
So critical.
And so I don't believe in too much learning. Now, what I would say is that too much learning without implementation
or application
is a problem. Because now then, what are you learning? Or too much learning without a real purpose behind it. Like me, I learn because one, I love to learn, and two, I learn because I'm working towards a vision and a goal, and every new level requires a new set of knowledge.
Yes.
And so I don't never feel as if there's too much learning. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by all of the things that I am learning at the time, but it's always geared towards, okay, I am developing for this next version.
And how can my learning impact somebody else? How can my learning empower somebody else? What knowledge I'm going to transfer from having all these things that I learned, how do I now transfer this knowledge to impact somebody else?
And when you find, and I've come to appreciate something that I can learn 5-10 years ago that I didn't even think was necessary or as critical then, comes to support me and help me in my role today. And so it goes back to, what is your vision? What do you want to achieve for your life? And what knowledge do you need in order to achieve that?
And then we talk about technology. What you learned last year may not be
what you learned this year
may not be adequate. And so learning is continuous. We're out of time, but we're not out of information.
Yeah.
So at this time, we just want to say thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for watching and listening to The Grow Show with Keshelle and Glenn.
Until then, grow and
go.
Woohoo! Bye.